when my Kundalini first started rising, I would just continually, this energy was rising through my spine and through my brain, and it would go in a circuit. It would go up through the cerebellum, then at the back of the cerebrum, work its way forwards, then drop down through the thalamus and the whole central brain complex, and then down through the spine and out through everything. But then fairly quickly, again, it would start into the cerebellum, and I always could relax a bit when the energy was in the cerebellum, because the mind isn't there in the same way. It's like colours, feelings, very tactile, this shamanistic type place. It is a form of identity and mind, but it's not the same direct mind as in the cerebrum. It's very uncomfortable when your Kundalini rises, because you're so used to being identified with what you consider to be your thoughts, your ideas, your mental process. And to not be that anymore feels a bit like you've gone insane, because you're not what you considered yourself to be anymore, and you're not sitting in the set. So that was always very scary for me. And it also, as it drops down from the cerebrum down through first the thalamus and then down through the whole central brain complex. And I always call that the central brain complex, because in anatomy they divide it from the brainstem and then the thalamus, and the brainstem has, as they call it, the reptilian brain, and then the thalamus is bright light. But if you bring that together as one unit, it makes a person. It's like calling it those two things is like a person with their head cut off, or a head with the body cut off, and you put them together, it makes a workable unit. But the top of that, the head, the thalamus, feels a bit like the seat of the being. So as the energy starts going through that, it's a bit like where you're sitting, and you can't sit there anymore, because so it's like, and there's, I'm going to die. If that goes through there, I'm going to die. And in the end, you just have to let it, and I'm still alive, or at least I think I'm still alive. I might be dead and just having visions of running groups, you never know. But anyway, this going through that was the other terrifying bit. But as soon as it got through and started getting into the lower layers and back into the pons and the relating to the cerebellum and down, it was much easier. So there's very different qualities of energy to those two organs. We're not going to deal with the central brain complex. That's more in the lung circuit webinars. It is the cerebellum and the cerebrum. We're going to be working with those two organs, and kind of, you know, how the mind develops as we progress through life, and the feel of that, and how we are captured by that. There's a certain amount of freedom to be working with the anatomy that houses the intellect and the mind. Because if you can work with the anatomy of it, if you can view the anatomy of the intellect or the identity or the mind or whatever these different words mean, I'm not sure what any of them actually mean, but they're pointing towards something. When you can view their anatomy and have a feel of the anatomy, you're feeling that on a physical level and viewing that. So what captures us and holds us. By working with the brain gives us the opportunity to no longer be captured. I think the brain is an area where if we work with it along with the rest of the body, it's an area where we can achieve enlightenment, whatever that may be. I think there's an ultimate process that will go on in that area that is truly liberating. I also think it's an area as we move forwards in evolution into the new times, which just seem to be beckoning in now. It does feel like the whole world is waking up at the minute. You know, I think there will be changes to our brain and the way we view our brain and our whole gestalt. I don't think we can move forwards as a race without transforming internally, and definitely through the brain and our relationship with our identity. I think that has to transform. I don't think we can move forwards just by politics or something like that. It's a spiritual journey, and as we wake up and as the world wakes up, everything follows that rather than the other way around. A lot of us may feel captured by what is happening in politics or big pharma or all of these different things that are going on. We may feel captured in that, and we may want to try and fight against that. And there are many freedom fighters doing their thing, but ultimately this is a spiritual journey. And whatever you believe, I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything, but it's hard not to be involved in that, whatever side you come down on. It's quite hard not to be involved in that one way or another. And I think as more and more of us wake up and more of us do this work, that is truly what moves us into the new age and what just changes the energy and outlook for everything. Because I think there has to be something that we can't even imagine at the minute. I think it's out of our imagination what is in our evolution going forwards. And it may not be in our lifetime, it may take a while, but I think if you want to make a difference, I think work on yourself. Do what you can, but work on yourself, I think, is the biggest transformation we can make.